Hello, everybody. Welcome into today's webinar on the newly launched Supplier program within the Ethical Charter Implementation Program, or ECIP as it's commonly known. ECIP is an industry collaboration led by major buyers and suppliers committed to supporting the entire produce supply chain on a continuous improvement journey towards more responsible labor practices. ECIP is guided by an advisory group that includes Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco, Kroger, Target, and McDonald's, along with 4 of their suppliers. Today, we'll be jumping into the Supplier program, or Supplier Lab. Lab because it supports employers to learn about the ethical charter, assess their management system, and benchmark their progress towards better labor practices. My name is Madeline Edlin, Product Marketing Manager with Equitable Food Initiative, or EFI. EFI serves as a supporting organization that manages ECIP's software platform and provides technical support. Just a few housekeeping items before we get any farther. First, please submit any questions you have in the chat feature if you're on Zoom and on the comment feature if you're on LinkedIn. We will gather those up and save time at the end to respond. Finally, we will be releasing this recording in the next few days, so keep your eyes peeled for that. All right, let's jump right in. First up, I would like to welcome and introduce Wyatt Macy, Director of Sustainability with Taylor Farms. Wyatt.
Thank you, Madeline. I would like to first welcome everyone, again, on behalf of the advisory group. As stated, I'm Wyatt Macy. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Taylor Farms and oversee our company's environmental and social impact, and I have a seat on the advisory group here at ECIP. So I wanted to take a few minutes to really talk about the key value pieces of the ECIP program and where we as a company kind of see the value and personally as well. So the first and probably the greatest impact I think this program can have in value is this idea of audit fatigue and uniformity, something that in the area of sustainability and social accountability, our industry really needs. And so because ECIP is not an audit, again, is not an audit currently, there's ability maybe in the future. However, today it is not an audit, it's a self-reported assessment. So that really helps reduce that audit fatigue. And the fact you have some of the largest buyers in the system, as you can see on the screen, committed to this initiative and using this initiative and really helps bring that uniformity out rather than multiple different big retailers or customers going about it in their own specific, unique way. So that's a huge value piece that we really want to highlight. The second is resource aggregation. So one thing ECIP I think really will be of value to both suppliers and growers is that today, say you want to embark on a social accountability journey or a responsibility journey within your company, figure out how to baseline your efforts or your initiatives, and also build capacity towards those. There's not really one great resource you can go to online or various other entities that you can find resources around ethical recruitment or proper wages and employment, recruitment, etc. There's not a source for that. And so what ECIP I think can really do, which would be really valuable for our industry, is bring that marketplace to life where it has all those resources that a company can go into and explore and learn from, whether it be consultants or templates, practices, etc. So I think that's a huge piece for this program as well. The third is conversation starter for further transparency. So labor is a sensitive subject. We all know this, specifically within agriculture as well. And sometimes a supplier and grower, they don't have that great communication channel between how those labor practices are going. Do you need further support? How can I support you as a supplier versus a grower? And so this is a really great piece that or a program that sets the stage for that conversation and kind of gives walls to talk to. You can specifically talk to just stay within the ECIP realm, or it can build off of that. And so I think it's a really good program to help build that transparency between the growers, suppliers, and the buyers eventually. That is a sensitive subject that can really help form and start that collaboration. And the last is really about this idea of compliance. I think this may be a little bit aspirational, but who knows? The idea of where I think general compliance is stuck in this kind of aha moment I caught, or an audit of you did this wrong, fix it, where this is really about self-response, being honest with your responses, self-grading yourself as an operation, and then really using that marketplace to improve. And so I think there's a huge potential for this to have actual impact that can be greater than an audit. And so can we even rethink this idea of compliance of this audit? Finish an audit, you did wrong, fix, never look at it again. Can we actually use it to build capacity in something more than just I got you wrong moments, right? And so I think there's a huge opportunity here for that, and I'm really excited to see how this program progresses. So with that, I'll hand it back to Madeline.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Wyatt. That was fantastic. Great to have you here. Next up, we will hear from Jim Hancock, Vice President of Produce and Floral at Sam's Club.
Hello, good afternoon. Everybody's still awake. We're getting closer. That's some great work. Right, small steps make a big difference. So really good to see that. My name is Jim Hancock, and I have the pleasure of leading the Sam's Club Produce and Floral team. Excited to be here today. We are talking about people, some of our people strategy. And a few years ago, we started working on, with industry leaders, the ethical charter for the produce industry. And that was a set of principles and ideas that we could all agree to about how we would treat people. And everyone rallied around that. I'm happy to report that at Sam's Club, over 99%, and at Walmart, over 98% of all suppliers have endorsed the ethical charter. So thank you for your support on that. That's a big deal. And now we're moving to the next step, the implementation. We worked last fall to roll out the ethical charter implementation program. We call it ECIP because the other's too long to say. And but it's a tool that you can enroll, sign up for to get ideas, best practices on how to improve people procedures inside of your organization. And the nice thing about this ECIP tool is we worked with lots of other retailers, food service, so that you're not coming at all of us differently with a different audit, a different procedure. This is something that's universal for a couple of different, for our industry, for all your customers. And I think it's really going to be good. We're off to a great start. Over 50% of our growers and suppliers have already engaged in the platform. So we're moving along and making progress. Now, I will say, I just want to add, I know a lot of you have invested a lot of time and money into social certifications, and that is all good work. We're not saying any of that was wasted. That works well in place of ECIP or works well alongside of ECIP. So continue to do that. And if you're a non-produce supplier in the room and you want to engage in people activities along this line, check out the Gigaton platform or Gigaton portal, and you'll be able to go there and find supplier leadership people, enter some specific goals for your business, and you can track progress, and we'll all celebrate those together.
As you saw, Jim outlined next steps with the ethical charter from history into implementation. And here to talk more about that is Peter O'Driscoll, Executive Director with EFI. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Madeline, and hi to all of you. Thanks very much for joining. Delighted to be here talking to you about the Ethical Charter Implementation Program. And I think to get us to better understand the program, it's important to remember and understand exactly where it came from. Those of you who have been in this industry for a decade or more will be very familiar with the 2014 Los Angeles Times series Product of Mexico, which shone a bright light on some pretty serious labor violations in the Mexican supply chain and connected the dots between farms, growers, suppliers, and buyers in a way that really got the attention of the industry. At that time, PMA and United Fresh, the two major trade associations, recognized that the industry needed to respond. They formed a joint committee in 2015. And as many of you will also remember, by 2018, that committee published the Ethical Charter on Responsible Labor Practices. What I really want to emphasize is that that ethical charter was written by the industry for the industry. It was not a regulatory framework or a set of standards that was imposed by an outside entity. It was actually the industry itself saying, we believe in responsible labor practices, and this is our effort to establish 13 principles that we expect every employer in our business to follow. So the launch of the charter in 2018 was very important, but many of the major buyers who asked the suppliers, as Jim Hancock just referenced, to endorse the charter also had serious questions about how they would know which employers, which growers were actually upholding those principles at field level. And that's really the challenge. A lot of the labor violations that they were concerned about happen at field level. Facility audits do not provide any information about what's happening at field level. So there was a general interest among suppliers and buyers of figuring out a scalable approach to strengthening labor practices at field level. As Wyatt mentioned earlier, the important thing to understand about the Ethical Charter Implementation Program is that it is not a compliance program. It is not an audit. It is a capacity building program that is designed to educate the industry about each of the principles of the Charter, to break the principles of the Charter down into management systems that would enable an employer to uphold the principles, and then to show that employer how to implement those systems. In November of 2023, after a very important piloting process, the buyers and suppliers that you see on the screen now came together and launched ECIP. Initially, the first step of the program was what we call Grower Lab, Grower Learn, Assess, and Benchmark. And that platform has been functioning now for almost 10 months. And it walks a grower, an employer, through the different principles of the Ethical Charter, through the management systems that uphold those systems. And then it invites them to assess their own performance. Confidentially, their answers are not shared with you, their supplier, and much less with the buying community. So it's important to recognize that ECIP really, as a capacity building tool, has built in a great deal of confidentiality with the goal of allowing employers to benchmark their systems and their improvement over time in this continuous improvement journey towards more responsible labor practices. So Grower Lab has been functioning now for 10 months. And as of last week, the ECIP program introduced the next phase, which is called Supplier Lab. And Supplier Lab is essentially a parallel system that strengthens the management systems of you as suppliers in order to have you support the growers in your sourcing network to implement the practices and principles of the Ethical Charter. And so with that, I'm going to say the Supplier Lab launch at this point is a really important evolution in the development of the ECIP program. Just as the ECIP program is designed to support the continuous improvement of labor practices at field level and the continuous improvement of supplier practices, we want to emphasize that as this program expands over the years, we will be adding new and supportive functionality to the platform that really supports the capacity of the industry as a whole to abide by the principles of the Ethical Charter. And with that, Madeline, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Peter, for that overview. Up next, we have Kenton Harmer, EFI's Director of Market-Based Impact, to pick up where Peter left off, orient us a little bit now where we are, and a look into the future. Welcome, Kenton.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline. Yeah, so what I want to do is just for this audience, which is primarily suppliers, is to just sort of foreshadow what you will see when the next time you log in. So the next time you log into ECIP Lab using your current credentials, you will see the Supplier Lab functionality available to you. And like Peter said, it looks very, very similar to the grower experience because it's a parallel system that complements the work that's being done in Grower Lab. So you'll have a learn channel, and that learn channel is going to be based on saying there's 15 management systems that, when developed, implemented, and effective, really represent best practices for supporting your grower network to align and maintain alignment with the ethical charter. So it's not you being in there about like, how do you manage your workforce per the ethical charter? It's about how do you provide support to a supply chain that is trying to increase their alignment with that document. So 15 management systems on the Learn channel. You're going to be given lots of resources so that we as an industry can all have the same language around this stuff. And you're going to be provided with some guides, some templates, a lot of really important collateral that will help you sort of really understand this particular management system and how you might operationalize it at your organization if it doesn't already exist. On the assessment channel, we're just going to say, hey, based on this particular management system or this series of 15, is where are you at today, right? And it's one of these, it's not to punish you if you're not doing well at this already. Remember, those answers and those responses are confidential. They do not leave your organization. So we really encourage people to take a very honest and credible assessment and say, if you're struggling in this area, that's really to be expected. A lot of this stuff is hard and a lot of this stuff is new. And by marking yourself accurately in the assessment channel of where you are against each of these 15 management systems, then we're going to be able to provide you some more customized guidance on how to get yourself to a place where you're more comfortable, how to move up the ladder, if you will, on these. And so using the knowledge you've gained and learned in the Learn channel, using the assessment functionality, then on the benchmark side of Supplier Lab, that's just going to help you organize, prioritize, and sequence your work. What is it that you want to do? What's going to make the most sense for your organization in terms of your own continuous improvement journey? And it'll give you some next steps and some guidance on how to use this information and use this platform to get your organization exactly where you want it to be in terms of supporting your grower network to align with the ethical charter. If you have run into any problems with that, of course, just reach out to us. As you are entering and engaging in that, you are going to be earning engagement stars, the same way that growers are earning engagement stars. Those engagement stars, as they are collected and shown in the platform, that is what is shared with your customers and your buyers. And in a few minutes, Deanna will walk through very exactly what your customers and what your buyers will see coming out of this system and coming out of your credible engagement with the system. So this is a big deal for us to be able to have this functionality. We think it creates a lot of business value, and that you'll be able to offer that to the suppliers that have been active in ECIP thus far. And it's part of a longer roadmap of development that we're doing. One of the next big pieces of ECIP that will come along in early 2025 is to acknowledge the important role that farm labor contractors play in our industry and giving them their own learn, assess, and benchmark experience, so that when the farm labor contractors that credibly engage in continuous improvement, we can identify who those folks are. And when growers use those farm labor contractors, they'll in essence be rewarded. They're going to be able to say, all right, there is an incentive for really choosing the folks that are highly engaged in this work. And so we'll be able to show to the growers who the FLCs are that are really taking a leadership position in this. After that, in mid-2025, we'll also be opening up a worker portal, and it's going to be called Worker Lab. And that's really to give a lot of information that's worker facing about the ethical charter and about the workers' way that they can participate in moving our whole industry forward in creating full alignment with the document and with the principles in the ethical charter. So Madeline, it's a very busy roadmap. We've got a lot of things coming. We're really happy with how the supplier part of the industry has particularly responded in the last week to Supplier Lab coming out. And we're here to continue to support all the suppliers in this journey. and continue to build out this ecosystem. So we really have this one-stop shop for the industry about how do we really move the whole floor of social performance up in fresh produce.
Amazing. Thank you, Kenton, for diving into that. As Kenton mentioned, we're going to have Deanna Monroe join us to do a technical overview and a deep dive into the back end of ECIP Lab and Supplier Lab. So welcome, Deanna. I will let you get your screen share going and get yourself sorted and take it from there. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Madeline. Yeah, as Kenton mentioned, I'm going to walk you through, Kenton and Madeline mentioned, I'll walk you through Supplier Lab and the buyer dashboard. So with the launch of Supplier Lab, the supplier dashboard got a bit of an upgrade or an update. You'll notice here at the top right, your engagement profile is a new feature. This is where one of the places where you'll see your engagement stars earned. As you earn an engagement star, those stars will be filled in. And as you can see, when you hover over each star, it lets you know a little bit more information on how to achieve that star. The grower stats here have also been updated a little bit. The invited, accepted, and subscribed were features that were previously already in the system, but the completed assessment is a new feature. So that's letting us know that one of our growers has completed the assessment. And then when you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll see this green box with some coaching there. This coaching is going to help you complete tasks within lab to earn more engagement stars. And then I'm just going to populate this field here to show that as you complete those fields, the coaching will update to, again, help you continue to earn those stars. And then that particular feature populated another stat up here for you within the chevron. So let's go over now to the lab portion of Supplier Lab, starting with the Learn channel. As Kenton mentioned, there's 5 sections here with 15 management systems that are to be assessed. You'll see that as you click on each of the descriptions with the accompanying management system, there are some links to some valuable resources that you can click on to help you assess. There's also a notes box that you can add whatever notes that you want to. These notes are all internal. None of these notes are shared outside of the users within your organization. And then you can also prioritize any of the management systems that you deem necessary. The assess channel, as Kenton mentioned as well, is where you're going to assess where your organization is at today by choosing one of the 5 options below. And then the last channel is going to be benchmarking. This is where we're giving your data back to you to, again, for you to use to set priorities and set an action plan. So if you click this little plus icon, it'll show you a breakdown of how you responded to each of the 5 sections for the 15 management systems. If you need more information about how the stars are earned, you can click on the Learn How to Build Your Score, and that will give you a lot of information related to how you earn each engagement star. So these engagement stars are then displayed in the buyer dashboard. This is what your buyers are going to view. This is what they have access to. So as you earn those stars, they're going to show up in the buyer dashboard. They're going to know what stars you've earned, and they're going to have information about your supply chain and how your growers have participated. So starting in November, your customers will have access to this buyer dashboard, and they will see your engagement profile prominently and some data on your growers that are participating in Grower Lab. And with that, I will hand it back to Madeline.
Awesome. Thank you, Deanna, for that awesome overview and technical expertise. What a wizard. All right, we are in our question and answer time. So if you have any more questions, please pop them in the chat on Zoom or on the comment section on LinkedIn. And I would like to bring back up to the stage Peter, Kenton, and Wyatt to respond to questions? Welcome back, everybody. Love it. We've got a big panel. All right, I've got a few questions for you, and I'll just let whoever feels so inclined take it. Can you expand on how those of us who are holding a social responsibility certification are not going to repeat work by doing ECIP?
Madeline, I'd be happy to take that.
Awesome.
Let's just remember that the purpose of ECIP is to support the expansion of responsible labor practices at field level. So in the case of a grower employer who already has one of 17 benchmarked social certifications that are listed on the ethicalcharterprogram.org website, then that grower will be able to use their certificate, their existing certificate, not only to have free access to the Grower Lab platform, but also to earn a gold star. So those 17 social certifications at field level earn the grower a gold star, which shows up in their grower engagement profile. In other words, ECIP doesn't add any additional burden to those growers already holding the certificate. It gives them an opportunity to demonstrate to their customer that they have earned that distinction. So no cost, and they don't have to do the self-assessment. We would argue, and I say this, as Madeline mentioned, Equitable Food Initiative, we are supporting the implementation of this program. We also have a third-party certification program. And even in our case, we believe that growers can still learn a tremendous amount from working their way through the ethical charter management system questions. So we'd encourage growers to do that, but they're not required to do it, nor are they required to pay to subscribe to the system. I hope that answers the question.
That was great. Thanks, Peter. All right. Another question. When is this going live for suppliers, and is there a deadline for completion?
Yeah, so the Supplier Lab is live as of last week. So the next time you log in using your existing credentials, it will be made available to you. In terms of requirements and deadlines, this is, you're going to want to talk to your buyer about that, right? It's the buyers that determine what it is that they want, how they want you in the system and engaging, and whether they are going to set individual goals and deadlines for that. That's a conversation we really encourage that you have with your merchants about what they want to see about or regarding your organization in Supplier Lab.
Great, thank you. This is related. I'm going to jump back to Peter really quick. We have other ethical programs like SMETA. So is it necessary to complete the platform? Circling back a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll say it again. If you look on the website, you will see the list of 17 benchmark programs, including particular versions of SMETA at field level. So if the grower in your system has those certificates, they would send to ECIP a copy of the certificate, including the date of expiration. And for as long as that certificate is valid, that grower would have access to the platform, either to use the self-assessment tool or simply to register their gold star, to earn their gold star. They're not required to do anything more than that, even though we would argue they could gain a lot from using the capacity building function of the platform.
Great, thank you. All right, Yana, I believe this one is for you, and it might be a specific case that we want to follow up with, but I will ask it so that everybody hears. Is there an automatic answer for the supplier number of growers shown by you, Deanna? We haven't answered that, and we just entered the website, and there was already a number in for the supply chain. So I'm not sure if that's a technical error that we should follow up with one by one, or if you wanted to address that.
Yeah, no, there's no default or automatic supplier number that should be populated. I guess if you maybe need to check with your other users, your other admins on your account, but if there is an error and that number is not correct, you can reach out to support@ethicalcharterprogram.org, and we are happy to remove that number for you. So if that number needs to be removed, happy to do it.
Thank you for that. All right. When assessing how many growers make up 75% of supply, are you looking at that in terms of weight or dollar value? It can be quite different depending on items like potatoes versus berries.
Yeah, so that 75%, we're really looking at dollar value, what we're trying to get to, right? And it's almost impossible to ask this question in a way that's going to work across commodities, across regions, and across business models. So let me tell you what the outcome is we want to understand, it's really important for the continuous improvement and the capacity building functions to understand the size of your supply chain, of your grower network, right? And what we're looking for is not every grower that you maybe bought 10 truckloads from, but every grower that you have what we consider a partnership relationship with. So not the transactional stuff, but how many growers are supplying most of your product to you that make sense to have to be included as the growers that whose good work is something that you get to benefit from. So that 75%, we've put it out there thinking of it as a dollar value and stuff, but it doesn't matter if it makes more sense for you to get to that number differently, then enter that number. Just tell us sort of, put into the system, what is the size of your grower network in terms of the folks that you have, that you want to have partnership and development and, a real long-term relationship with.
All right, this is a two-parter. Can you please explain how buyers are being introduced to ECIP platform, and will suppliers have visibility to their onboarding and engagement? And then a follow-up from the same person. Also, is there a comprehensive list of which buyers are being requested to use the ECIP platform?
Let me start by answering that, but I'm going to tee you up, Wyatt, because I think it would be great for folks to hear a little bit about the role of the advisory group. So I will toss to you shortly. But the bottom line on the buyer engagement is that ECIP was born from a collaboration among the 6 buyers whose logos you saw listed at the beginning of the webinar. Kroger, Costco, Walmart, Sam's Club, Target, and McDonald's. There are at least 7 other major buyers who are in various stages of discussion with the advisory group that Wyatt will say something about in a moment, who are considering using the platform. And here we want to emphasize that just as the ethical charter was written by the industry for the industry, we really hope that it will become an industry-wide solution. From the supplier perspective, we understand that often you have to deal with different requirements from different customers, and that generates a lot of work. Obviously, the more buyers that come into the system and use the ECIP platform, really the less work it will be for you all as suppliers to provide a single assessment that would reach all of your customers. So those 6 major buyers are already in. There are others that we hope will join in the program over the coming year. And the evolution, the development of the program is really shaped by the advisory group that Wyatt participates in. And maybe, Wyatt, you can say a little more about that.
Yeah, so I think we've also, Peter, had questions of that expansion of what that looks like in terms of the advisory group on the buyer and the supplier grower side. But as a supplier participating, in terms of the buyer ecosystem, it's something we as suppliers and buyers can kind of ask our buyers to look into and maybe commit to as well. So I've had many conversations with our buyers on if they're exploring a social accountability program or certification. I ask, have you heard of ECIP? Do you know what the program is about? Let me help explain it to you. On trying to push that there. Again, the more buyers we get into the system, the more uniformity the industry has around social responsibility and accountability reporting and any ask there. Secondly, I think the question on, what was the second piece? Oh, no, I think I responded to it then. It looks like it was the comprehensive list. Okay.
But can I just speak to that comprehensive list and say, Lara, there is a comprehensive list of the buyers that have already engaged on the ECIP platform, but we do not publish a list of the buyers that we're talking to, because obviously, until they make the decision to engage with the ECIP platform, it's not really appropriate for us to identify them. But you can be sure that as more buyers come into the system, we will communicate that through the trade press to the entire industry.
Oh, I will add a response too. That typically it's going buyer to buyer conversation. So if you're not part of that customer buyer team, you probably didn't get the request to participate in ECIP. It may have gone to a sales representative or a customer manager or something like that. So we're trying to get the conversations to go from buyer to buyer. However, the reporting responsibility probably will fall on someone within your company sitting in HR or a higher supervisor role, or et cetera. So if you haven't heard of your company's request as a supplier or grower to participate, I would check in with your sales teams. You probably have been requests based on the current buyer ecosystem today.
Great. Thank you both. Are any commodities exempt?
Yeah, the easy answer is no. This is an industry effort. It's by the industry for the industry, and so the platform is available regardless of your geography and your commodity. It's really built to be able to create a best practice set related to good employment and good support of grower networks. So yeah, there's not a concept of exemption. It's more a concept of accessibility of like, this is a platform that can benefit you regardless of where you are in the value chain and what you're growing.
And if I can just piggyback on that, I would say, if you go back to the publication of the Ethical Charter, it really was a statement of commitment on the part of the industry to upholding the most responsible labor practices possible. And the goal really is to move the industry in this direction, not through a compliance program that is designed to catch people doing the wrong thing, but through a capacity building program that is designed to support growers and their suppliers to do the right thing by understanding the kinds of management systems that promote responsible labor practices, and then supporting through a variety of means the implementation of the development of those practices in each of the companies.
Awesome. Here's a technical one. If an initial grower link inviting to ECIP expires, can suppliers resend the link, or do we need to ask ECIP support to resend the link to the grower partner?
If the link has expired and the grower has not opened the email or started the process of registering, absolutely the supplier within their dashboard should be able to click the resend button right next to their grower's name and engagement profile. There's a resend button, but if the resend button is not there, that means that they have registered. At that point, you can reach out to support to do some follow-up or to edit emails, etc. But absolutely, suppliers have the ability to resend an invite to a grower. And just an FYI, those links now expire after 7 days. So that grower will have 7 days to complete registration before you have to resend the link again.
Thank you. Perfect. All right, we've got a three-parter. First one I will answer. We will indeed share the slides via email when we send out the link. Parts 2 to this question. Is there a plan in place on how suppliers will achieve the gold star engagement? And then, once our growers complete their assessment, what is the supplier's next step? Will the program renew every year?
What a great question. Let me start, and then I think I'll toss to you, Kenton, for the future thing. But it's a great question. As we've explained before, and as I think most of you know, at field level, the growers who have one of those third-party certifications that has been benchmarked earn that gold star. In the supplier engagement profile, you'll see, and it sounds like you may already have seen, that the gold star is to be determined. And so at this stage of the process, the first objective is to get users into the system and beginning to access the tools and resources that they find in that system. But the advisory group, which meets monthly, which includes the participating buyers and major suppliers as well, will be determining, as we begin to see what the usage patterns are, what it will take to earn that gold star. And I assure you, we will communicate that over time. But job one at this stage will be to get into the system, to engage as many growers as possible in the system and begin to generate that data. But frankly, there are opportunities for feedback on that. If, as you come to understand the system, if you have suggestions or recommendations about what would allow a supplier to really distinguish themselves and stand out in the same way that a credible third-party certification allows a grower to stand out, that would be great feedback for the advisory group to take into account as they have those discussions. Kenton, I'm not sure if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, that's it. And Madeline, with any of the follow-up questions, do you want to rephrase those, or have we covered them?
The follow-up questions that I think we have one more that I'd like to re-look at. Good? Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. We have been invited to participate as a supplier by one of our retail partners. However, we are having trouble setting up our account. We are a grower, packer, and shipper. However, we haven't been able to set up our grower profile. How do we proceed there?
That I can answer that one. We have some stopgaps built into the system to prevent duplicates. So if you are a supplier and a grower and you're trying to register your accounts with the same email address, it will give you an error message. In that case, please reach out to support and we will add your growers, your packers, your shippers on behalf of you and connect your supplier account to them. And then you just simply log back into your supplier account, refresh, and you should have access then to all of the organizations that you are connected to.
Amazing. All right. One more, potentially could be our last. What is the difference between the Ethical Charter Implementation Program, ECIP, and the EFI certification?
Wow, so many differences. First start, ECIP is not a certification program. There's no audit, right? There's no compliance testing. So ECIP is a capacity building program, whereas EFI certification, as you probably know, is a set of rigorous standards that are then audited and involves training. So arguably, an EFI certification requires a much greater degree of time and investment and an audit that will confer that certification. We'll say it again 100 times. ECIP is not designed to be a compliance test or to catch people doing the wrong thing. It is designed to be a support and a resource to help employers do the right thing. So, I mean, I'm sure there are some more specific differences, but the most obvious one is certification requires an audit. ECIP does not require an audit.
Amazing. We got another one, which I'm thrilled about. All right. Will there be a star system or report back from retailers to showcase their engagement in ECIP or percentage of products purchased from those participating in ECIP? Showing growers how retailers are participating and using this program is a great way to continue to get buy-in.
Yeah, I love that question, and I love that thinking. So that would be Buyer Lab, right? Let's have Buyer Lab. Like, let's give buyers the chance to learn how to support suppliers to support growers. Let's give buyers the chance to assess themselves against a set of management systems that allow them to support their suppliers as best as possible. What I can say in terms of roadmap, conceptually, that has been talked about, but very, very lightly at this point. we're really, you can see how we're building. We went grower lab, supplier lab, FLC lab, worker lab. That next lab may be a buyer lab as well. But the point about like how having the buyers engaged in the work as well and being able to show their accomplishments back down to the value chain and how that could help move, folks even faster and more in the right direction. It's a really great point. But it's very much a long-term aspiration at this moment.
Can I add on to that? I think it's important to distinguish too, because as a supplier, I think there was confusion on our end at the start of the real difference between a grower, supplier, and a buyer, in that there is a barrier gap between. So as a supplier, I can see my invited growers and their engagement. As a buyer, they can only see my supplier engagement, of which is built off of a lot of my grower engagement, but they cannot see my growers engagement from buyer to grower. That visibility doesn't necessarily exist. The supplier, it's more of a step methodology. And so there's still ways to showcase that, but I want to acknowledge that within the system today.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Wyatt. So just to double tap on that is you as a supplier, you see your grower network, right? As a buyer, you see your suppliers, but you don't get the next level down to see the growers engaged with those suppliers. We understand the sensitivity of that kind of information. So names of growers are very protected within the system, the same way that your responses are protected.
And if I also want to applaud that question. I think that the thinking behind that question is really, really positive in terms of full implementation of the ethical charter. Those of you who've looked at the charter will know that there are 13 principles, one of which relates to buying practices, procurement practices that are conducive to suppliers and growers implementing the charter at field level. So as Kenton said, the specifics there are not clear, but I think the goal of the ethical charter really should be to bring all the stakeholders into the system and to enhance and increase transparency around labor practices, with the goal ultimately of rewarding those who are implementing the kinds of practices that are spelled out in the charter. So I would say we do imagine and understand that the implementation of this program is not a one day to the next proposition. This program will evolve over the coming years and ultimately evolve to the point of greater and greater visibility and transparency up and down the supply chain, so that all the stakeholders are working together around comprehensive implementation of these principles.
Fantastic. And Peter, you opened up yourself to some feedback with the gold stars, and you got some in the chat. So we are going to take that feedback into consideration. Peter's going to take it, but it's not a question. So Peter's got that from here. And I think that's our last question, unless anybody pops something in right now. As I mentioned, this recording will be available with the slides and will be sent out to everybody who registered for this Zoom event. So even if your colleague wasn't able to make it, they'll get it in their inbox. Thank you so much to my panelists for joining me, and to all of my attendees. Great to have you here, and I'm sure we will see you all soon.